Patterns. My escape. My refuge. As a boy, whenever life got rough, I'd look up at the patterns on my ceiling and float away. Those are the first words of Artemis Spender's diary, more known under his persona Mr. Gunn, magic-wielding serial rapist killer, and a villain to the character Maxx from similarly named comic book The Maxx. Created back in 1992 when Sam Kieth took an old design of a character from his portfolio that Marvel has rejected, changing up the colors and giving him his iconic purple and yellow. Later published in 1993 under the publisher Image Comics on the first issue of Darker Image, and getting his own run under the same name of The Maxx the same year. Created by Sam Kieth and William-Messer Loebs, edited by Mike Heisler, spanning 35 issues from 1993 to 1998. Maxx is a two-part story that explores the cycle of abuse, how it affects the person, how it spreads from one to another, and how victims of it cope and live on with that experience. First part, spanning from first and 20th issue, is a story of cope and people repressing the pain and trauma of pain they endured, protagonist of which being Maxx himself, a homeless man in tights that imagined himself being some sort of superhero, and Julie Winters, a freelance social worker with whom Maxx hangs out around. Who doesn't seem as who he might be, as in another world, Maxx is Brielle Lappen, protector of Leopard Queen and of whole Australia, more known as the Outback. The world created by Julie Winters inside her head, after she was raped by a man who pretended his car was broken down when she was just a college student, leaving her in deep pain and mentally broken, so much so, she pushed a better part of herself into Outback. Later on to the story, adds Sarah Jameson to the group, a deeply troubled child whose father supposedly killed himself after shooting his boss with a rifle, leaving her to feel empty and broken growing up without a father figure in her life. Second part of the story, going from 31st to 35th issue, follows now Sarah Jameson to her adulthood, as she reconnects with her dad Alati after the events of Julie's story. Instead of being the magic-wielding serial rapist, is now a harmless old man who works with abused women and children to recover from the abuse they have suffered. The story of these last issues is just as about coping and repression, but now it's added with how these same people attempt to heal themselves from the pain. With Sarah's case, the pain of feeling abandoned by her father figure and forgiving him. Maxx was a successful enough comic that had not just ended up with figures releasing, a spin-off of Friends that Maxx created, but also an MTV animated show of the first 11 issues that is adapted like it was taken straight from the pages of the comic. In this video, I don't want to retell the whole story of Maxx. Well, I'll try not to, but to explore its creation, explain and admire the beauty of storytelling and the writing that Sam Kieth, William-Messer Loebs, and even Alan Moore managed to create one of the perfect stories that is a one-of-a-lifetime experience, on top of beautiful artwork that Kieth has created for. But let's talk about what journey Sam Kieth had with Maxx before he got his own run under Image. As back in 1980s, Sam Kieth had the idea of a rabbit-like character and had written and illustrated the early renditions of the character, which were not quite the Maxx we know, but the other Maxx, who was just Maxx the Hare, who first appeared in the comic Primer issue 5 on the publisher Comico in 1983. But as you can see, it's nothing like the Maxx. He was more smaller and skinnier than his final rendition, as it was just an experimentation, as he said. Instead, Maxx the Hare, with one X, is a mercenary tasked with assassinating the dictator and along the way killing one-eyed guards and escaping. And that was the only appearance of the side character, as he only appeared in one issue and was pretty much thrown into trash bin. Later the same year, as the first issue of the Maxx was released, Sam Kieth gave an interview for Comic Talk, where with Brian Pulido asked the questions about the Maxx, its characters and story from the first issue, and in one of the pages of the interview, they discussed Julie Winters and the choice of fashion for her. That is how Kieth said, grew up with the girls that dressed like that and wanted the character that dressed in outrageous fashion. And as well, he got over that how Mike Heisler had a goal to make Maxx have much more clearer story than even a 12-year-old could read and understand. As how Kieth put it, Marvel had it for the reader right and up front on what's going on in the book, while Dark Horse, with a much older audience, could afford themselves to leave readers questioning the story and leave them in a fog, assuming that the reader has the same attention span and ability to understand the creators what were they trying to say in their book. But back to Julie Winters and Kieth's choice on the outrageous fashion as it is really befitting the character Julie is, as she's far more or less a weird character. A college dropout with broad sex feminist views and a freelance social worker who's getting comments from homeless and ill people that she looks like a prostitute with her clothes, while also blaming the victims of Brave for their at fault to be one of the in the first place by acting stupid and reckless. For what she blames the others, she does the same as beforehand she was raped and beaten and left for dead by a hitchhiker she picked up along the way, that no one visited her for the time being she was at the hospital. As the incident happened to her, she was left alone at the scene of the crime, completely alone with her thoughts and mind, afterwards which she dropped out of college and drove away to a different city to be a social worker. Results of which caused her to suppress a real part of herself into Outback completely, as the outside world became unsafe and she became angry with it because of it, to avoid all of this pain and memory, just so she could go on living an essence of a normal life that she had remaining up. But her pain goes deeper than that, as she suppressed a part of herself early on as in her childhood, and it all starts with her mom and dad. Her father was an architect, a soft, shy, positive man on a round side that won't even hurt a fly. But her mother, while being pretty, she's different as she's more capable to do what needs to be done and not afraid to say anything. She had an uncle. Uncle Ari is his name. He visited her father almost every day, talking about his visit in Australia, going on how fantastic and how extraordinary flora and fauna was in it, and she was listening to him, staying up late just to listen. She liked him. She liked the stories he told her parents. Well, except the time when she was watching cartoons on her television and he was been talking. Life seemed perfect for a little child like her, but one day she encountered a bunny on the road and ran over Bunny by the car. Its leg broken, ripped away, and she took pity on the animal and took it to her home in a box, kept it under her bed. But Bunny was suffering. It was dying and it was scratching the box, only progressively getting louder and louder. Parents try to talk to her, but she won't listen. She shuts them out of her system and focuses on her doll. Eventually, mother had enough. She grabbed a shovel and gone to the garage, where they placed the bunny in, unaware that Julie followed her and watched as she killed the bunny, right in front of her eyes. That's where her childish innocence died. She'd seen her mom kill bugs before, but the bunny was a different beast. It was the first seeds of her outback, the birth of the place, the birth of Australia. Little Julie was the only living being in it, as everything else was dead. Just like the bunny. She had only good intentions for the animal. She wanted to help it, to heal it, so it could live on with its life, but she couldn't, and she didn't know how. And it was eating her out more and more as the scratching was getting louder and louder with each night. And avoided all the bad things tied to it all with her doll, eventually snapping its head off to shut it up, to stop it talking about the dying bunny. Just as Julie cuts Mr. Gaughan's head off in third issue as he was about to tell her repressed memory. All she was ever doing in the first chapter of Max's story was repressing her pain. That's why she decided to leave town and become a social worker, because of the bunny she couldn't save and watched her mom put it out of its misery. That's the reason she dresses so vulgar, so feminine and blames victims. To avoid all the pain, to avoid the memory, she avoids the other victims for they remind her of her own pain. But Maxx changed a lot of it. Maxx, as previously mentioned, a homeless person. She met him as she hit him with her car. She could have not have done that, but the fear and the memory of what had happened to her couldn't let her to make the decision and resulted in ramming him into an alleyway. But instead of leaving him, she went after him. It reminded her bunny, the bunny she picked up to help but couldn't, and it made Outback almost part of reality. As the essence of it was passed on to Lamp, she put it on him, the part of the spirit animal that is tied to her Outback, and the homeless man became the Maxx as it transformed him. And this is where we get on to Maxx. But before we get to it, let me explain the Outback and spirit animals. They're not just part of the imagination of every person, they're directly tied to each person's most crucial moments in their lives, regardless if they were good or bad, but most of the time, if not all the time, tied to the trauma and pain. As already talked about Julie Winters, she's the best example, as her spirit animal became a bunny she rescued, but its death planted the first seeds of the Outback, which is later reinforced by her brutal rape and became a shelter for both her old and young self, refusing to listen, heal and move on. And Maxx Maxx is not just Julie's spirit animal. He's not a superhero, he is the gateway. He is a physical manifestation of her outback, being able to transport his subconscious into outback of her mind and protect the Jungle Queen, the better part of herself she hid away, defending her from Mr. Gon and his ish. He is her spirit animal, Lapin, that is his name, for he is not a human, but a rabbit. He doesn't have any memories of his life, but what he does have is purpose and connection. As previously mentioned, he's connected to Julie, but as well connected to her pain, he's representing not just the pain she suffered, the world she imagined, but her unwillingness to face the truth and heal. As Julie throughout issue 10 and 11 plans to leave, Maxx is not ready for her to go. He wants her to stay with him. He wants her to remain the same just as she does. He refuses to listen to Mr. Gon as he tries to explain and smashes his head in, just like Julie does by ripping his head off. But he's not driven by Julie's world, but of his own as well. He takes care of her, he seeks her company, he seeks comfort, and he wants not just to keep her safe, but every woman he comes across. Before being Maxx, he was known as Dave O. He was a technician in a nursery home. Not much known about who he is, but about his childhood, there is a reason why he takes care and stays near, and all about protecting women from rapists as Mr. Gon, and that is because he felt shameful. He was kept in a little box. It's wet, dark and wet. That's how he described his box in the first issue, dark and wet, and there's just one word to make him snap back into reality, and that's Mommy. Now, Maxx doesn't explicitly say what his trauma, but there is a good chance of what it is. As Artemis explained in the last issue, and how we can see in other issues, Dave was cut off from feminine. He looks forward in Julie and projects it onto every real woman he clumsily tries to protect, all the while ignoring the female spirit animal which lies in wait inside of him. He tries to protect and take care of any woman he comes across, as it is portrayed in the first issue and in moments where he clips Julie's nails. As well, the female spirit animal he has, knowing that Julie's was created when she witnessed Bunny's death, and that the word mommy throws him off, it is fair to assume that his trauma revolves around his mother being hurt, presumably by his father, or that she was a prostitute. He couldn't do anything about it, and so to save Dave's pain to watch it as it happens over and over, she hides him in a box under her bed, not having strength to protect her from violence. Just for you to understand, Maxx is not Dave. Maxx is a spirit animal. He's an entity of everyone's outback. Dave possibly has his own outback he never been in, but that is because his outback is the little box he lived in, and his spirit animal was Julie herself, almost as if seeing her as his mother he has to protect. Eventually, after Julie is now pregnant with the child and finally hears her memory, Maxx realizes that she now has to move on. Dave regained his memory as the outback crumbled from remembering the pain, and he disconnected from it, and his body became just the suit. All he has now is the memory of it. But as Dave lives, remembering the pain, no longer suppressing it, it just makes it worse for Julie. For she doesn't know how to move on, how to live a normal life now. She doesn't want this to end. She doesn't want her rabbit to go. But Maxx is no longer a rabbit, for he's now a man and the rabbit is gone back into her mind. Eventually, you have to move on, no matter how much it hurts. Now, before we continue talking about the Maxx, let's talk a little about Alan Moore, because he had quite an influence on the further story of the Maxx after the 20th issue. You see, back in time when Moore worked for the big comic book industry, he worked in Image Comics for a brief time, working on such things as Supreme, Wildcats, and Spawn. With the 21st issue of the Maxx, he redefined the world of Maxx as it went forward into the future, where he presented some key prompts for Kieth on how Sarah confronted her dad Artie for being Mr. Gon, and he was quite shocked that she called him that, and that created some serious questions as the previous 20 issues were even real at all and not part of her damaged mind and psyche because of his absence. In later pages of issues as 23, Kieth said that Alan did more on the first 14 pages than on the rest of the issues, since the direction of the book forced his ending to be abandoned. He is great to work with, and I hope we can do it again. I appreciate the creative boost he gave the book. But then 2 issues later, he points out that this is something Alan Moore introduced, and I'm not sure where to go with it. Either Gon was lying, or perception depends on the observer. The main problem I had was that it invalidated everything Sarah knew to be true, so I had to change it back to Gon acknowledging that it did happen. So even though Alan Moore provided a big help with the book, he sure isn't perfect. And I'm glad that it wasn't all in Sarah's head, but I like the idea that she was the only one that called him Mr. Gon, and it caught on to him. Alright. Back to Maxx, and that is to Sarah. Sarah James, a troubled child of Mr. Gunn, from whom she suffered from his absence, suffered that her daddy wasn't alive as she believed it was. Even though it was told her that he killed himself after killing his boss, it didn't stop her from believing that she and her mom were the reason he left them, leaving her with overpositive mother, a walking sunshine with her big fluffy orange hair, trying to be with her almost every possible moment to make her smile and be happy. But due to trying to do it, she brings that toxicity out of her and turns her positivity into toxic one by screaming at her, pressuring her, and then seeks comfort in her own daughter. Later, looking for some sort of masculinity in someone, she hangs out with Jimmy, a bully that she thinks she can seek comfort in that couldn't bring in her, by projecting his childish masculinity onto other kids who don't have the reason to get it for, but the hole left at her dad couldn't be filled by someone like Jimmy. Eventually, because of her mom, she meets up with Max and Julie Winters. After Julie leaves, Max gets inside of her Outback and explodes it as a single lot of blankets and toys, with its own Max, Sarah's spirit animal being horse, which represents her childhood she had before her father was gone, as one of its inhabitants represents her own father, as the queen of its land being someone that bears the resemblance of not just her, but her own mother too. It's more clear that Sarah, when she was just a little, she used to play fortress with her dad. More likely that her Outback was created when the news of father's absence were told her, but eventually in the second chapter, her magical abilities start to materialize in her, which as it seemed caused a rift between reality and her Outback, letting out slug of self-destruction created because of her father's absence and letting out her Max. But all it seems like a fault of her dad. She disappeared in her life and in turn ruined her innocence and caused her not just to hate him so much more, not because of him being a magic-wielding rapist, but because of him being a deadbeat. And all the Mr. Gunn stuff was the fuel to the fire she had since when she was so little. Realizing only after finding out the truth of his life, she doesn't forgive him for being so cruel to women she brought pain to. She'll never trust a man like him again, but she forgives him for his absence in her childhood. But she knows she needs her father, and after the last issue, Sarah and Artie are in Julie's Outback, and now can recollect the last time they had, for now they can be together at last after healing their relationship, and nothing will rip them apart anymore. Then there's Glory, Mr. Gunn's victim, one of the many women he have attacked and left scarred. She was attacked in a laundromat by him, but years later was visited by him as Artie came to her seeking absolution, but not just her, but any woman he could have tracked down he had attacked, seeking absolution for his actions. Eventually, she came to him and let him have it. She screamed, cried, hit him. Everything she had boiled for many days, for many years, but everything she had boiled inside of her was not just towards him, but towards the one that abused her father. As Artemis presented himself as a punching bag for her, she seen not just the pain caused by him, but her own father figure. Now that's all just an assumption, but judging by the 34th issue, Glory, despite the abuse she suffered from her dad, she still tried to find something to make him proud of, tried to seek his validation, to try and be like him, to try and make him at least not to hurt her. She can't forgive Artemis for the damage was done, but what he tried to help with had an effect on her and made her feel better. Now, what all these people have in common is that they suffered trauma and pain in their childhoods that more or less involved their parent. For Julie, it was her mother when she killed the bunny. Dave's was when her mother was hurt. Sarah's her father's absence when she was little. And Glory seeking validation but receiving only pain from her dad. But what all of them have in common is Artemis Panda, Mr. Gunn. A man that inflicted pain and brutally attacked women with ease, but as well deeply troubled man. For what he has done, there is obviously no forgiveness, but the reason he did was corrupted and wrong and deeply wounded by his childhood. Recollect the first minute of this video. Patterns. Patterns is his refuge, his escape. When traveling Australia and visiting Julie's dad, he wore almost exact same patterns he saw when he was just a child. The same patterns he wore when he traveled across many outbacks of many different people. In second issue, he proclaimed a deep hatred for women.
Of course I've got a problem with women!
Everyone has a problem with women, because women taunt and tease, because they are attractive and they punish you for being attracted. You claim to be a pro-sex feminist, but would a feminist of any stripe be so deliberately risk-taking? You dropped out of college, set up this freelance social work of yours, started bailing people out of jail, trying to reform them, surrounded by dangerous, desperate men. And look where it's gotten you.
So it's my fault.
I'm not the one who wears underwear outside her clothes.
But in truth, he never knew why he hated women. He was like this since his childhood. Whenever he was punished by her aunt, he felt like he deserved it. He was an ugly, perverted little worm in his head. He was sexually assaulted multiple times by his babysitter and developed a mindset that it was okay to do all of this, that what someone like him should do. Growing up, he had 3 wives. First wife was a drug addict which he took care of and took all the abuse she gave him, ending up selling their baby's eyes and later dying with it from overdose. Second wife, even though a good woman, the effects of first wife left a damage in him, and he never trusted women again and in turn abused her, only to slowly realize he was wrong after he was beaten by her to a pulp and she left him. After Australia, he married his third wife, Sarah's mother. After first 2 marriages, it left him confused, but he pushed everything that was in him down. Sarah was born, and everything seemed perfect. But the pain and unexplainable things like his fetish kept persisting. He tried to take his own life, till he stopped him and he tried to abuse her, then later tried to get her abuse him, but couldn't bring himself to do it. He almost reached the point on why he was like this, but couldn't, only to ruin it all by telling her the dream of abusing Sarah. That's why they decided he would leave, and across the time he's been traveling the outbacks of the people, which he didn't realize would be the people he would attack like Gloria, but also attacking the same people he would do to hurt even himself, a part that he hated. He never knew why he was like that, until the news of his aunt's passing came to him, and then he remembered. Artemis was sexually abused by his own aunt multiple times in a young age, made him wearing parka in a bag so that she couldn't look into his eyes after what she has done, but she kept doing it. Now, does it justify his actions? Does he deserve forgiveness? Of course not. Even he doesn't think that it justifies at all, but he tried to work. He tries to fix it, tries to make it better by contacting his victims. All of his childhood was full of pain and evil, raped by his own aunt and babysitter. That is why 33rd issue looks so different and out of line with the rest of issues, because it's the story of his fear and the man that was supposed to take care of him and instead took advantage of Artie. He has been going to shelter until he met Gaynor, who's been helping him to recover, but he couldn't hold himself and tried to go back to his Mr. Gone ways, until he saw in a girl a little himself. The same little him that was abused. Eventually working with people that experienced such things as him, healing with his victims, and with Gaynor he started getting better. But he couldn't stop himself thinking that he deserved it. As it was said already, he thought he deserved the punishment for his aunt. He thought he's a perverted worm who enjoyed it. That's the thing of many victims of such things. The damage that it causes to mental health, it's almost impossible to heal. But it's possible to make it easier, to make it bearable, to make it so that you won't have to suffer and project the suffering onto others. All of them unite Ish. As Artie said, they're all children of shame. Julie's rabbit, Sarah's abandonment, Dave's mother, Glory's dad, and Artie's aunt. It's the reason Sarah turned into an Ish, because she was a child of shame. It's a big cycle of abuse they cope and project onto others. So what's the story about? It's about women being cruel. It's about men being uncontrollable animals. It's about familial violence. Violence that is caused by both parents onto the child, that they should have protect and cherish, but instead abuse it, whether it's physical or mental. But also that we are capable of recovering, that we are capable of stopping this cycle to go forward to others that didn't deserve it like we did, whether it be strangers or family, and that is not everything is lost. Alright, that's it for the video. Feel free to discuss the story of Maxx in the comment section and how you feel about the story, what does it represent to you, and etc. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm Paige Skull, and I'll see you all later.